evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Duncan-Smith, and I am the chair for the Arts and Letters Committee for the Brooklyn Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Incorporated. And today we have something super special for you. It is our inaugural Red Talks, the Pearls of Wisdom edition. This is a presentation where we highlight and celebrate dynamic sorors of our illustrious organization, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Incorporated. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our newly elected and installed president, Miss Kenya Johnson. Madam President, will you please come and give greetings to our guests?
Yes, Sora Duncan-Smith, thank you. Good evening to all our wonderful guests that have taken time to join us this evening. My name is Kenya Johnson, and I am the president of the dynamic Brooklyn Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Incorporated, that impacts this cultural universe named Brooklyn, New York. This evening, you are in for a treat. You will get the chance to meet and hear from Emmy-nominated producer Marjorie Clarke. She has produced Def Comedy Jam, Jeen-yus, which is the Kanye Trilogy, and it is my belief that she might love Brooklyn just as much as I do. So she has also produced 3 Brooklyn documentaries, A Kid from Coney Island, which is the Stephon Marbury story, another documentary called Dance Brooklyn, and Mayafa the movie, which documents the world-renowned theatrical production, Mayafa, produced by Brooklyn's own St. Paul's Community Baptist Church. So again, I want to thank you for joining us. And Sora Duncan-Smith, please start the show.
Thank you, Madam President. What a great opportunity for us to kind of hang out together. I'm trying to see how we can get Sora Clarke and myself both pinned at the same time, so we can start our little chat.
There we are. You almost had me.
Amen. How you guys feeling? You good? Can you guys, let me see in the chat. Can you guys see Sora, Marjorie Clarke, and I together? You can? Awesome. So, Marjorie, it is awesome to have this opportunity. You know, I've been a fan of yours for so very long. How are you doing today?
I am great. First of all, I'm just so honored that you guys thought of me to start this whole series of Red Talks. I always play the back. I don't play the front. So for you to do that, I'm so honored to be part of this. This is amazing to me. So whatever I was feeling before, I'm elevated today.
Oh, I love that. And that's what we try to do with this program. And you know what? This is why it's very special. I'm so glad that you're our first Sora. This is the first one we've ever done. And this is a program started by our newly elected president, President Johnson. And so she's somebody that loves the arts, right? She loves the arts just as much as we do. So we thought it would be apropos to talk to somebody with such an amazing and well-rounded career in the arts. Can you talk to us a little bit about your beginnings and when did you realize that you wanted to create your life around the arts?
Well, there was always music and theater in my house. My parents loved music. My parents went to the theater at least once or twice a month. They both worked for the Board of Education at the time, and they got TDF tickets. So they were gone, every other week pretty much with a group of people. So you got all the excitement about being in the theater. And then when you got to go and to see live theater, like, oh, this is amazing. Everything about theater was amazing. So I loved that. And I started playing music. Every Black child got to learn how to play the piano. Of a certain age, you either played the piano or you played the piano. Or you sang in the choir. So I ended up playing piano. And in school, I started in a small band in elementary school playing the clarinet. So got into music. My dad loved Miriam Makeba and Harry Belafonte and all kinds of other jazz music that was in the house at the time. And so you hear music at home. A neighbor was a dentist, but also a sax player who went to Howard. And you could hear him every Saturday morning playing out of the basement. And so you had music around you the whole time, and it just made you smile. It made you happy. So I loved the music, I loved everything about it, but I was on a track, Black children, especially if you're half West Indian, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a teacher. I was going to be a doctor. And all up until, and I still was in the orchestra all through elementary, junior, and high school. I was first chair, second seat for clarinet in the orchestra, all borough, citywide. And then I went to college and I went to Syracuse University. When I was there and I was in the sciences and I loved math because I hated writing. And at some point I got invited to be on a program as a freshman, a program that they were doing for Black History Month. And they needed more female voices. And somebody heard me talking somewhere and they said, you got a nice voice, come on. So I came on to the radio station, I did a whole jazz set, and they're like, oh, you could do this. And I'm like, okay. And I realized I really liked it. I liked it a lot. And college radio is free. You're not programmed to do certain things. So you can explore spoken word. I mean, this is the 70s. So we had poetry. We had, folks was just starting to get into poetry and alternate ways of communicating pre-hip hop. And I also simultaneously could not carry the organic chemistry book. That sucker was this thick. And I was like, okay, this is not for me. I can't even carry this stupid book, much less want to study this. So I sort of semi-switched it and started spending more time working on the music, working in radio, working in art stuff, helping out anybody who was working in theater groups. So that's where it started, basically.
I love that. And so you said that you come from a West Indian background, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what island are you from?
My father's family's from Jamaica.
Mhm.
And I have one of those families, like a lot of us do, is we can only go back a certain generation for family. My Jamaican family, I can go back 4 or 5 generations. My mom was born here in New York City, and her mom was born in South Carolina, but came to Roslyn, Long Island in the 1910s because the story goes that my grandfather, my great grandfather, had a little altercation with the people and they had to get out of town. And so in the 19s, 1910, 1909, how far away could you go? Long Island was potato farms. So they went out to Roslyn. And that's where, my grandparents was. But we cannot go past my mother's father's family. I have no concept of knowing other than a certain Halifax County, North Carolina. I don't know anything. I have not been able to find anything. So because she did not gravitate to finding that out back then, my West Indian family was like, you West Indian, dude, first grandchild, and from the only son. So, I'm everybody's child.
Oh, I bet you were spoiled also.
No. I wish.
So,
Just
so
loved, just very much loved.
that's a great transition into, at least we're going to jump all over because you have just a big career. It's a great transition into talking about Ma'afa and your work
Sure.
with Ma'afa, because before you produced the movie, Ma'afa the movie, you've worked with Ma'afa since the inception or very early on. Talk to me about how did you get it, and talk to me the meaning of Ma'afa and why it's so important to you, because I know that it's a very important movement in your heart.
Oh my goodness. So that goes back to how I joined St. Paul in the first place. I joined St. Paul in the 80s when a friend of mine was getting baptized. And I was raised in an Episcopal church. So going to a Baptist church was, I had Baptist friends, but it was different. When I went to St. Paul and for their baptisms, the entire congregation, that place, 1,200 people, dressed in African garb. I'm like, oh my God, this is where I belong. I belong here. And then Reverend Dr. Johnny Ray Youngblood was so prophetic in his preaching that I had never heard anything like that before. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is where I want to go. So he wants to meet everybody who comes in the door and sees what talent you have and what you can bring to the party. So they had just started Ma'afa that year, and it was touching in terms of what its mission was, but production wise, it was a mess. I'll just, and he'll acknowledge it and Jesse will acknowledge it. So, and I spoke to Rev about it and he said, well, listen, if that's what you do, come on. And so year two, I started with Ma'afa, and back then they were teaching all about what Ma'afa means, and it really means the great suffering. And the philosophy behind us doing that work was that Bishop Youngblood felt that some of the ills of the Black community, the alcoholism, the depression, the abuse, the violence, all of those things can be traced back to we've never acknowledged the trauma that we experienced. And that was the purpose of Ma'afa. And they started to have workshops. They brought in, the list of names is incredible. Dr. Joy DeGroy brought the concept of post-traumatic slavery disorder. Well, there was a whole set of workshops that everybody had to go through who was going to work in Ma'afa. You had to understand that this is what you have been through. And that's how Jesse got together a writing group, and they wrote the different pieces to reflect what they felt in terms of reliving what the experience was from the African side to the transition over the ships to once you get here, and then where do we go from here? So it's but if you don't understand where you went and what you've been through, you don't know how to release that pain. So what I brought to that was they didn't have, production schedules or how to organize these rehearsals, because Jesse would have you up in there until 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, Jesse, it's a Tuesday. You have kids. You have to do the kids first. You can't do the kids second. So that's where it started, and putting some structure into it. Mr. Howard, God bless him. At the time I was working at MTV, so I had access to a lot of equipment rentals that I could get good deals from, and I would, appeal to their community concept that, you can bill Viacom that figure, but you can't bill this church that. So we need this many walkie-talkies. There's no way you can run up and down that building and not have walkies. So we brought that into play. Then Jesse also had some theater people, some really amazing theater people who would come in and light it, and we got it up. But the critical part of the whole thing was everybody coming to understand that we are resilient beyond any other people on earth, because nobody went through what we went through. The Jews have a very similar path, but their path was a window. They had a window in the 30s, 40s, 50s. They had a window of their trauma. Not taking anything away from that, but we had a whole different kind of trauma. They had a focused trauma. We had 5, 6, 7, 8 countries traumatizing us and never allowing us to keep our language, never allowing us to understand, what we went through. The most important thing about Ma'afa, that thing that resonates with me that we still do, is we had a workshop from a sister from Southern California who works with mothers who had their children lost to violence. And her therapy was, you created a doll and you dressed the doll and you gave the doll all the things that you wanted your child to be. And that's how you can release your trauma. We did something like that at St. Paul, where you created a doll for the person who was next to you on the boat, that they went over, you stayed, you're still here, you want that, whatever their progeny would have been, you wish for that, and that's what you create in this doll. That kind of power releases you, because you now recognize, I am not a victim. I am not a victim. I am beyond resilient, because I lived through what this was, and I lived through it generationally. So that's what Ma'afa means to me.
So thank you for that. And thank you for your work, because, is it 28 years later? We're still doing the work. We are both members of the Great St. Paul Community Baptist Church, and Bishop Youngblood is the founder of Ma'afa. A lot of people understand, and I'm glad that you brought up how Dr. Youngblood said, you know how to do some stuff, get in there and do this. A lot of people know what an actor does, and they know what a director does. The director directs the actor, right? What exactly do you do as a producer? Like, what exactly is that?
Well, that is that the producer, as I do it as a producer, is I take the vision of the director and I execute it. So my responsibility is for, and this is works with any director that I have worked with. I worked with when I've worked in music videos. It's what is your vision? Okay, this is what you want to do. This is the look. You want it to be in a building. You want cars. You want people. I'm the one responsible for hiring and organizing everything that reflects what your vision is, so I can bring your vision to life. So the production stage manager at St. Paul for Ma'afa is I'm working with all the different departments so that they are all meshed together and we're all working on the same schedule of deliverables. In production, my job, which is why I have a 9 o'clock tonight because my people are the West Coast, is you have a vision, you want this documentary to look like this. Okay, how many days are we talking about? How many people are we talking to shoot? How many, who's traveling? Am I paying for am I giving an honorarium? Am I paying the person who's going to be on camera? I do the budget and I do the logistics on the top level. And then we hire the people to actually do the work.
I think that's remarkable. And I love the fact that, they have a soror at there. It's going to get done well if we have a soror at the helm of everything.
Listen, Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated would make
Incorporated.
sure there's no way that I can rep them colors in that name and not come with it. That's what we got. That's what we do.
That's what we do. Those two documentaries that you've worked on, you've worked on many of them, but the two that we all know, the Steph Marbury one and the Kanye West one, two really polarizing personalities. As someone doing the logistics for both of them, can you talk about some of the joys that you received, but also some of the challenges?
Let's see. The joys. The joys are seeing it done. Seeing it done and seeing the reception of people that see it. I think the biggest joy for the Stefan piece was Steph was he was very hands off. He didn't want to see anything, and the first time that he saw it, he actually had tears in his eyes when he saw that. And that was like 2 weeks before we had shutdown for COVID. But seeing his face in the theater, watching him watch it, that was the joy. The joy of the little kid that's in the end of that. That was not staged. Those little kids were getting a haircut. And, he's a big celebrity. He doesn't live in Brooklyn anymore. He lives in China. And so for him coming back, he came back to the hood and all the hood folks came out to see him. And the little kids didn't know who he was, but they figured he was somebody. And while we were setting up in the barbershop, he went around the corner with the kids and bought everybody candy. Everybody got $1 or $2, whatever, and he bought them candy and he came back. And that was the entire setup. So that moment, the joy was the connection of him from the hood to give a child the opportunity to realize how he could dream, because he didn't think he could dream. And that was incredible. The challenge, I'm working in the hood. I'm working with a hood celebrity. That is always a challenge. That was a challenge when I worked in hip hop, when I worked at Def Jam doing music videos. It's a challenge still. The Kanye piece is a little different in that all of those, the majority of that film is my director, Cootie, who had documented Kanye for 21 years. And there's very little brand new footage other than when Cootie went to see him. And it was only Cootie and a camera. It wasn't lighting. It wasn't the normal that we have. It wasn't the sound person. It was nobody else. Cootie and a camera hanging out with Kanye shooting. So that was all a post-production. That was the longest post-production job I've ever done in my whole life. I'm very proud of, though, however, the very first thing that I did with Cootie and Chike was the Muhammad Ali documentary called Muhammad, the People's Champ. That was amazing because we had to find a way. There's like so much about Ali that's out there. What are we going to say different? We're talking to an audience, and we were talking to an audience that's never seen him in his prime. So what do they know about him? How do you get to understand who this guy is? And so working with a great editor, Cootie and Chike have a great eye, and we got to pull all the stops. We got to find a researcher who knows how to find all this found footage that people have never seen before. Jim Brown said, I just saw something I've never seen before, and I thought I've seen everything because I'm one of his best friends. So that was amazing. The Kanye piece, I was not a Kanye fan, in my hip hop life earlier. I thought he was a genius, but I thought he was a bit of a, he's a problem. and he came to the Def Jam family way after I was gone. So I wasn't, I'm old school hip hop. I'm not this guy, but he's a great lyricist, great writer. But I wasn't engaged in caring about him in that way. That was definitely a mission from the directors who wanted to do that. And I'm like, okay, this is what you want to do. I'm all in for you. But what I learned is I learned a whole other side that I didn't know. So that's one of the joys of working in production, where you get to learn something that you didn't know before. The mechanics stay the same, but the content that you gravitate to, and the things that you learn, that's the new thing. Even in this last job that we did, the NYC point guards. Now we knew, a lot of the basketball legend types, but they had never been celebrated in this way. And then hearing their stories and what we can say and what we couldn't say, because there's a lot we can't say, because we are one thing that I believe in, and Cootie and Chike believe in, is we're not going to denigrate our community. We're not going to do it. We know what the rumors are. That's how we did our Martin Luther King doc. Same with Muhammad. We know what people said about them. We know all the down stuff. That's not what we want to do. We want to celebrate them. We're not going to deny that there's another side, but we're not focusing on that. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the things that impacted society.
That's what I loved about the Kanye documentary. And I love Cootie. Cootie's my friend for a few years. Actually, I met Cootie with Kanye back at the Def Jam days.
Right.
2 questions before we open it up to the chat. And we want the chat to give us some questions. We already see one question already came in. But 2 things. The first thing I'd like you to answer is, in getting to see Kanye from a different lens, understanding mental illness, but also understanding his ego and understanding a desire to be heard, but also a very hurt. But so many things are going on at one time. Talk about the moment that is switched for you, that, wow, there's a level of protection that we have to have for him also.
That time where his mother says the giant looks in the mirror, that and the response to that was kind of where the switch was, and his burning desire to be heard because he believed in himself. Now, what's happening now, I really, it's hard to know what's going on, because he has sort of changed a little since his mother died. It's a lot has happened, and there's some parts of him that are provocative for the sake of provocation, and then there's some parts of him you go, well, what are you thinking? But he also did not want to see anything until it was done. And he didn't want to, he gave permission up front to Cootie to say, we already talked about this. He had him on camera talking about what Cootie's doing a documentary 20 years ago. But he came to the screening that Netflix did in Los Angeles. He came in after it was open, after it started. He had not seen Cootie's daughter, Ivy, since she was born. So here's this 14-year-old that he's seeing, and he also teared up because he realized he got to touch his touchstone. He got to remember who he was and who he used to be, and who he used to be. Now, where he is now, I can't speak to none of that.
I mean, nor would we expect you to, especially with a he's still ours, though sometimes he doesn't act like it. So there's a desire for us to still be
Still
respectful.
our people. We'll keep him, but we're
God,
gonna keep him in the closet. We're gonna lock him up until he takes the meds on time. And it's
that's
gonna be
very
all right.
important to note. That's very important to note that he is bipolar, clinically diagnosed.
And he knows it. And he knows
He
it.
knows it, and he also doesn't take his medicine. And so I think that just to applaud you guys, you did an excellent job with the documentary and being careful to allow the audience to be sensitive that when you see outburst, is a person is sick. All right, just go lighten it up before we go to the questions. And I received 2 questions in the Q&A spot. Talk about some of these videos you worked for with Def Jam. What was your Def Jam like? Because you was at Def Jam with LL and Slick
I was.
Rick, the golden age.
I was in the golden age. So my first meeting with LL Cool J, me and Paris Barclay, Paris and I both come from commercial world. This is his first music video. He's excited. Todd was on the road. We go to meet Todd, and they told us we had to go see him. So wherever he was, Tennessee or somewhere, we flew to wherever he was to have a meeting. So we having a meeting with this kid, and this bruh does not get out of the bed. We have to have a meeting with him in his hotel room in his bed. Sorry. Okay. So there's that. Redman, first time I met Redman, we were at Russell's apartment, and he had this tissue in his nose, and it was summertime. It was hot as heck. He had on sweatpants and a wool hat, and he kept doing that thing. And I'm like, Russell, we can get him an ENT who can fix this. I swear to God. I'm like, okay, whatever. Heidi, I think you got this. I'm a pass. Public Enemy, let's see. The time that we were doing, by the time we get to Arizona, and we are 50-50 partners with Columbia Records. Columbia Records was very clear that we cannot blow. The scene was we were blowing the governor of Arizona up, which happened to be at the time John McCain. We were blowing him up because they were the one state that wouldn't ratify MLK birthday as a holiday. So the end scene in their film is this. Swear up and down sideways. David Holliston was the president at the time. I'm head of video production. We're never going to do it. We're not going to do it. Okay. I get a phone call from Heidi in Arizona, like, I hate to break it to you, but they just blew the governor thing up. They just did a blow up thing. And Chuck is like, he ain't not having that scene. So I'm like, okay, well, there it is. So I guess we're going to have to deal with it when it gets done. And you see it in the film. Who else did I work with? Allison Williams, which was the first of R&B that Russell did. So I was on the road with Allie. I was on the road.
Let's call my name. And
Let's call my name. I was on the road with Public Enemy when Bono from U2 wanted PE to open for them. And then I found out the difference between what a rock band has and what we get. Bono had the private plane. Their green room had the peeled shrimp and all this other stuff. We were like, wait, we have boxed lunches? Oh, okay. This ain't right. We ain't playing in the right league.
That's interesting because you've been at the early years of commercial hip hop, and now you see where Kanye not only has, peeled shrimp, but he probably has somebody go catch the ocean, get a farm, come deliver it for you. I have some questions for you because we could giggle about Def Jam all day. Denisha asked, as a Black woman in an industry that's often hostile to women, specifically women of color, how have you continued to shatter the glass ceiling and also encourage others to keep going in the industry? That's a great question.
That's a very interesting question. The thing that made it a little different from me is, that was my job. I ain't hanging with you. I'm not going to be at your house. I'm not coming to the club with you. I'm not your friend. I work for you. Straight up. And when I'm ready to go, I'm out. The other side of that is I was also older than most people. And I was into the culture way before all these folks were in the culture. So I'm coming with my head wrap. There's only one other sister, God bless her. One other sister with a head wrap, but I got, cowrie shells in my hair. I'm wearing African design clothes. You know, I was into Mashoud way before anybody knew who Mashoud was. I was having, what did my friend Robin say? Robin said, Armani meets Africa. That's what we're going to wear. So, I presented a different person. And in that respect, because I'm older and people don't know, you know, that I hang out like they hang out, but I'm not going to hang out with you because I work with you. You know, my friends are publicists. I understand what happens. I'm not going to ever be the topic of a conversation. So that's how you manage to get through that. Oh, I worked with the Fugees. I had a big Fuji thing. We did Fuji La in Jamaica with my friend Maxine. Yeah, in terms of joy, the joy was doing it. The trauma was Praz decided he wanted to jump off this waterfall. Yes. Okay. In terms of how the business, how the industry is, and how do you break through in the glass ceiling, it's not easy. It really is not easy. You have to remember it's a job, and you do not take it as seriously. You take the function of your job seriously, but you cannot take everything else seriously. I think my paralleling with Ma'afa helped me separate that this is just something I do. This does not define me. I am a descendant of an African who did not jump off the slave ship. And I don't need this to validate who I am. So if you don't like what I said, okay, fine. I'm going to still live tomorrow afternoon. You know, if this don't work for me, I'll see you later. Something else will.
Amen. I love that. I am a descendant of someone that didn't jump off the lake. So you can't, I get it. Monique has a question for you, Marjorie. It says, we've seen a lot of conversations over the past several years around the importance of diverse storytelling in arts and for it to be more reflective of stories of Black and Brown people. What are your thoughts on the responsibility of predominantly white film and television and film houses to create diverse stories at a time when people like you are telling stories about us, by us? Should we be demanding a seat at the table or creating our own table? Thank you, Monique.
I think we should be, at this stage, we need to create our own table. We have enough allies who will support what we need until we finish building our table. But if you look at what Ava has done. Look at what she did. She has, and look at how many seasons Queen Sugar has been and how many women directors who she demanded were done. And when they challenged her, she said, well, wait a minute, now how much TV, how many series have never had a Black woman, have never had a woman, much less a Black one? And you're going to ask me, why am I using Black women? Come on, are you sure you want this conversation? So it's having an ally is a good thing, but those of us who are of a certain age have already broke through that door for y'all to come through. Y'all have much more knowledge of what we didn't know because we had to learn on our way. Y'all know how to look at a contract properly. Y'all know what your value is. You know to demand what you want. And if you can't, go find somebody that can give it to you, because there are Black people in finance who will give you money to do the work. So why would I need somebody? You know, I don't say I wouldn't advance it to someone. Absolutely. But I'm not going to stop if they say no. I'm going to keep it moving.
I like that. Keep it moving. We have a question from Ms. Asha, and I think you kind of said this earlier, but she wants to revisit it. Hi, did storytelling play a role in your upbringing, and how does storytelling influence your style as a producer? And I'm gonna add this with the question that's below it from Naya. Naya says she's a Caribbean American also, who studied math and music in college, a former employee of Def Jam, shout out to the Def Jam alum, a lover of music and film in general. It's so beautiful and inspiring to feel represented in this manner, that you are doing so. Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently with any of your projects regarding the production, and what projects you're excited about working on next? So you talk about how your storytelling kind of influenced how you are as a producer, but then go into the question about what you're working on next and how, the different projects regarding production, things you might wish you've done differently in those productions.
Well, you know something, one thing I have learned through the evolution of understanding African spirituality and my spirituality is everything was done the way it's supposed to. If I'd done something different, I'd had a different path. If I decided to stay in medicine and become a shrink, I'd have a completely different path. I followed the path. I listened to the voice. The voice said, no, no, turn left. The voice said, no, no, I don't think you want to go to that party tonight. Take your happy ass back home and finish doing what you was doing. And the one time I didn't do that, I slipped on some ice and twisted my knee up so much I had to have surgery. And after that, I've never not listened to the voice that said, do this, don't do that. So there's that. What's the next project? The next project is the story of Ernie Barnes. This is something that I met Kudi and Chike to work on when I worked in advertising, and they went to work with. I hired them to work with me for the Marine Corps, and I said, "Oh, I love the energy. I love what you guys are doing. You remind me what I used to do, and I'd love to, love to work with you guys again in the future. What are you working on?" So they said, and this is 2007. And they said, well, we're trying to do this thing for Ernie Barnes. And I'm like, these hip hop brothers are talking about art? Oh, whatever I could do. So they evolved. They went this way, I went that way, and I stayed in agency. And then when I was done, I called and I said, okay, let's do this. And they said, yeah, well, that on hold. We have this Muhammad Ali project. Can you help us with that? And that's where that started. So now we've come full circle. We've done quite a bit of work. We've done, we got an NAACP Image Award for that one. We did work for Nike. We did work for Under Armour. We did work for this amazing, oh my God, finance company, asset management company, a venture capital, a VC company out of Mountain View, that had us do work where we talked to all these CEOs that you all already work with their products. You just don't know who their CEOs are. We did one-on-ones with them because of the relationship, that the way that those guys work out of integrity in a conversation with somebody so that you get that back from them. And so let's see, I started with them in 2015. We're just doing Ernie Barnes because we did a whole lot of left turns and right turns, and now we're ready. Now we're 100% ready to do it. So that's the next thing. Storytelling. Where did that come from? Oh, my parents read to me when I was a baby. They read. You got stories. You got your uncles that come up from Jamaica, and everybody's telling a story. Everybody got a story to tell, and it's going to be, it's the big fish story. Well, I caught this big fish there, and it's a minnow, but to hear them tell a story, so just such joy when you get storytelling out of your family and friends that you go, you know what, this is resonating with me because this makes me smile.
I love that. And you make me smile, Soror.
Thank you, Soror. Thank you so much.
We love each other. And this actually, Stacey Frazier, she's one of my Spelman sisters. Actually, she's asking, how do you decide what projects you work on and what do you hope to convey through this medium? And I want to add to that, just maybe leading the question, I shouldn't do that, but I want to maybe direct it. Do the projects speak to you or do you seek them?
The way we operate, it speaks to us. We don't really go out after something. We will without articulating it in that way, but the way it has been is it's the right thing at the right moment. Kudi and Chike both believe it. God directs us. So if it's for us, it's coming to us. And that's basically how those things come. I think I saw somebody asked a question in here about if you didn't go to film school, how would you what would you do? So, well, I didn't go to official film school either. I didn't go to producer school. It was something that was learned and observed, and someone taught me, okay, this is the budget. This is how you have to do a budget. This is what these people cost. So I was taught by someone, various people at various times, but I've had the opportunity and I had a unique opportunity. I had a corporate job. My boss, whoever worked for my boss, did any off-project thing for the CEO. And the CEO it's a Fortune 501 company. So I'm sure you guys have watched PBS, and there's always a funder named Rosalind P. Walter. Well, I worked for her husband, Hank Walter, who's the one in charge of international flavors and fragrances. Anybody who works for my boss, Vec, worked for Mr. Walter. Mr. Walter, because of his involvement with Davos and all of those things back in the 70s and 80s, if he's taking a trip, the person who worked for my boss would, give him a little background. I gave him everything about where he was going, who are the people, what products that we get from them for us. I gave him a whole thing. He says, who wrote this? So he became my mentor. He taught me how to read corporate, how to understand how corporations work, how to understand the mission of a corporation, and always how to keep your eye on your own prize. Know what the game is you're playing. So if you go play in this game, better know the rules of that game, and then figure out how to work that game for what you want to get out of it.
We've never had so many questions, right? So there's a bunch of questions here, and I see that there's some in the chat. So I want to get through the ones here and then jump in the chat. And I know I'm going to be very selective and try to combine them because I know your time is limited.
You got me until 8:45.
Look at God. Hallelujah. We like it. How do you decide? How do you decide the project that's right for you, the EP? I think you kind of answered that earlier, but
I can answer it again. If it's something that, we don't tend to work on anything we don't like. That's one. And I will say, especially at this stage of my life, that I will say, that one's not for me, but let me get you somebody who will do it, who I think this is good for, because this is not good for me at this point, but I could refer somebody,
You do referrals?
Yeah, man. All the time. Oh, that's how we network. How else do we learn who's who? When 7,000 years ago, it was around the beginning of the music video era, and we wanted to find more Black people in production, not people in front of the camera. Where are the people behind the camera? And God bless Grace Blake, and I forget the other brother's name, but Grace Blake, who was, at the time was the business manager for the Teamsters, West Indian woman from Trinidad, and they were going to build Silver Cup. And the city said, in order for you to build Silver Cup and us first to give you a tax rebate, you have to incorporate more Black people in and around Silver Cup. And Silver Cup people said that we don't know any Black people. And Grace, and I cannot remember the brother's name because he just passed away this year, they created a directory of everybody in every department. And we learned about these people in the early 80s. One person, Lance Fox, third generation gaffer. I forget the other brother's name. Second generation grip. Lamont Crawford. All these people who, they're not spike people. These are people whose families have been working in the production business, Black Teamster drivers, Black film people, Black people in the studios, Black people in the labs, Black people in equipment rental. Who knew they were there? But once we knew they were there, now we network. So if somebody wants something, like, call so-and-so. I need so-and-so. I need to get some gear. Well, no. Don't call him. Call him. That's how that worked. And it evolves. You find somebody, like, somebody got a project to me. I like them. I like the project, but I don't have the bandwidth to do it. Let me give you, here's 3 names. Maybe you could hire these people. That's what you do.
In my mind, when I'm thinking about this networking and your fingerprint of influence, I don't know if we keep going back to St. Paul, but I know for a fact, and our audience may not know, but you and your teams have been an influence, or even watched or either worked with these people directly or their parents. In the last 20 years, Ed and Duncan-Smith, my kid, Pop Smoke, my Alpha Baby who became a rapper,
Alpha Baby,
Aubrey Joseph,
Jesus.
Caleb McLaughlin,
I
from
remember when he was
Stranger Things.
born. I remember when he was born.
And Shahadi Wright Joseph. These
Please.
5 young people who basically dominate
Killing it.
over. You had a very, what was it like you watching them as a producer kind of coming up? Because you were there when these little kids were under the red fabric.
And they were miserable little creatures. They were just because they were kids. But one thing about that environment is they were free to be kids. You know, this is a thing that we learned from Dr. Joy. Is she did an experiment with a black child and a white child, parents in the bank. The little white boy running crazy. The little black kid sees the white kid, wants to run crazy too. The mama snatches that kid, say, no, you can't do that. Like what? What? Why not? Part of your post-traumatic slavery disorder. Once we learned that, our kids they were free. They were free to do whatever it is that their little heart desired in the confines of our space. So who knew what they were going to become? We just knew that these were kids. They were smart. They were talented. They could act. They could remember their lines. They remember their steps. They knew their moves. They couldn't keep still for too long, but they got the thing done. But there was no way to know. But then again, who did they come from? They were imprinted by their parents. Their parents were disciplined because they were dancers. McLaughlin, I did not know he was an opera singer until he sang one day, and I'm like, wait a minute, you have a lisp? What? It was amazing. But the imprint from the parents onto the kids and the freedom that the parents gave them. So I just watching them, you're like, oh my God, my kids, they're amazing. Jesse gets the weeps every time he sees one of them kids. We saw somebody who was in on Broadway, and she was just out of the moon that we came to see her.
Was that Eden or was it Shahadi?
It wasn't Shahadi, it was somebody else.
Was
Oh
it
my
Kim?
God.
It's another one. We have quite a few kids from Broadway. Was it one of the Mackey kids? She's in Hamilton. Like we
No.
have a lot of kids who
Yes, we have amazing kids.
And Brenda actually had a question about her daughter. Actually, it says, my daughter wants to know, when did you know your path, that your path was your path, for especially working in the arts where it was so unpaved and unclear? When did you have that aha moment and found your affirmation within yourself to do something that maybe your West Indian parents were like, you can't do?
Well, one thing my parents never told me I can't do. That's one. That's where we started. And that came to a head when I was in high school, and I waited until the very last minute to do an essay for a scholarship that was in the bag. But I waited till the last minute and I didn't pull it together. And what did we come to a head about? That I didn't want to do it because I don't think I was good enough or whatever. And my father said, wait a minute. I didn't want you to be a doctor. You wanted to be a doctor. I want you to be happy with whatever you decide to do. If you decide you're going to be a groundskeeper, be the best one. But I'm not going to tell you you have to be this. The thing that that's where they say that. But as kids, you have an expectation because you see how hard they work. So you think that's what you're supposed to do, and you operate that way. But do they say that? Not really, but you know that you wasn't not going to college. That was not an option. You're either going to college where we pay, or you go to work and you pay. Pick one. That's a no-brainer. What was the other part of the question? Sorry. Oh, when did I know? You know, I get aha moments every time I do something different. There's no one, oh, this is it. There's no one moment like that because each thing brings me to someplace else. You know what I mean? I think okay, yes, you know what? It wasn't a real aha moment, but it was when I listened to God tell me, I'm opening a door for you, pay attention and walk through it. I was in corporate. They paid for me to go back to school. They paid my salary while I interned in production. I didn't want to go back when my internship was up. But I went back and I realized I was miserable. And that's when there was a worldwide recession and the position that I was being moved to would no longer exist. And it was like, thank you, Lord. This was the door you told me to come through, because now they paid for me to go back to school, and it is in, I went to the new school for film and television. I got a certificate thing from them, from Global Vision, a Global Video, and that was what I wanted to do. So that was that aha moment. And then there's sometimes where you don't listen to the Lord speaking to you. And I recall when I left, when Uniworld and I just sort of not imploded, but we came to it was time to go. I had said to my friend Guy Route, I said, I hate it. I hate getting up. I get the Sunday blues at 6 o'clock at night. I start to lose my mind and I'm miserable. I do not want to go to that place with those people. And he said, well, you need to say it out loud. Say it out loud that you don't want to do this, and let God take his way. 2 weeks later, bam.
I love that. And I think the aha moment is whenever that God is inside of you, that namaste consciousness kind of sparks and you move from there. Ro Johnson, who's over at Brick, has and she also works with this amazing organization that empowers Black people to do entertainment.
Yes, she's at Brick. Yes.
Ro is. And so, well, it's not at Brick, but she has her own international organization that she works with. Can you talk about any time that you were tasked with a production that wasn't properly budgeted? How you fought for a budget to scale your project? How you do that?
You tell them it's not going to work for this money, and what are you going to scale back? That there's, at this stage, this is where I am. This is what it cost. We used to say this a lot when I was on the advertising side. It's not cheaper at the Black store. The same lights that you want them white people to have, they cost the same thing for me. So either you make a decision that you want less of this to work within the budget that you have, or not. But you got to, this is what you have. And I never intentionally go over budget. I will tell somebody, you don't have the money to do this. I think you need to rethink how to do it.
I love that. Don't go over budget. Child, working in Delta, I'll be afraid. I'm like, sometimes I might go over budget. They're going to get me. They're going to get me. But I want it to be fabulous. I want it to be great. Anyway.
Yes. And you can say, you want this, and this is what it's going to cost. Make a decision, because I won't make the decision of what you are willing to give up. You tell me what you're willing to give up, and then I'll make that work.
So I have another question from Monique. And she says, how is being a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated changed or improved your life? How has it impacted you, and how it shows up in your professional career? It's a great question.
Great question. Well, I am the only daughter. I was with my brother and I, and to have a sisterhood, it's one thing to have a sisterhood. It's another thing to have a sisterhood that you can pick up anywhere at any time and say, Soror, you don't have to know me. You don't have to know my story. You just know that I just called you Soror, and whatever it is, we had a couple of Sorors who worked at where I worked, and only once she said, I'm going to stand on the shield. That means whatever you just asked me, I'm doing. And to know that I have people like that, and that I can do that for them. One of my friends asked me, can you do this? Blah, blah. Sora asked me to, like, okay, what time I gotta be there? What you need?
You guys,
I have avoided this kind of a conversation from everybody forever. But you asked me, as a Delta, I have to do it.
Y'all should have seen me begging. Sorry, she just was like, you ain't got to do all that. I'll figure it out. So thank you again for doing it on the shield. So Kwana has a question for you. And I'm jumping around. I'm jumping around now. If I miss your question, I'll come back. But Shaquana says, achieving equity in film and TV is complex, right? A complex system level challenge. I believe it requires a collective action to accomplish the change that we wish to see, as our freedom is a collaborative project. So from an equity perspective, How would you say the industry is eliminating gatekeeping and creating resources that serve folks from diverse experiences and backgrounds that allow them to build and enhance their skills, in addition to offering diverse perspectives that add nuances to each individual? And before you jump into that, I want to add to that. Do you think gatekeepers are important for quality control?
Well, the whole concept of a gatekeeper um, has been abused to me, in my perspective. It's gotten a very negative connotation because the whole purpose of the gatekeeper is to keep you out, right? So you're not helping me if you're a gatekeeper. That not at all. Um, it was a very complex question, so I'm trying to remember everything you said. Can I scroll up and see it in here? Is it in the chat?
It's in the Q&A section, but I'll repeat
Oh,
parts of it. I'll just pull out parts.
I'll go
From an
back.
equity perspective, how would you say the industry is eliminating gatekeeping and creating resources for folk from diverse experiences and backgrounds?
I do not think they've eliminated gatekeeping at all. I think they have found new ways to do it so that it looks like, but they haven't eliminated it at all, because if that's the case, there would never be the kind of disparity that still exists. We still don't get the same size budgets that everybody else did. The only reason why this Kanye piece got this budget that it got is because Time Inc. was involved, and Kanye is Kanye. Would we come with a different project and say, okay, we want a bidding war for this because no one else has done anything like this? I doubt it. Well, I can give a perfect example of what it's like when I work on at Viacom, what I work on the BET side in terms of what they have for budgets, and what I work with on the Showtime side, what they have for budgets, right there. Or when at Uniworld, what Uniworld would get as a budget, and what Y&R would have as a budget. Same, they have the same parameters, they have the same ROI expectation, they have the same amount of and their ROI expectation. They want move cars. They want to move cars in this period of time, and they want it against the money that you spend. But you're spending hella less money than me, but you want me to deliver at the same rate that you're doing for those people. How is that possible? But we overperform every time because we're ingenious, we're smart, and we ain't playing with you. But in terms of gatekeeping, I don't. They're still there, big time, and it's worse because now they think that they are helping us. You're helping me because you think I don't know. But not only do I not do I know more than you know, and you probably know that I know more than you know. So you ain't trying to get me in there so that I can possibly take what you have because you think I'm gonna take your stuff. I don't want your stuff. I want my own stuff. I just want equal access to what you had to get what you have.
Blue. Here's a question from Yolanda Beaton. She says, as a woman of Caribbean descent who is first generation American, I'd love to know if you would ever work on a story about the dynamics of the Caribbean immigration experience into America. I think that's an excellent question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a couple of different friends who are working on something similar like that right now. Oh, absolutely. Because it is an interesting thing. When you're doing storytelling, it's who are you telling the story for? Is this a story for yourself? Then you do it one way. If you're trying to expose a particular idea to other people, then you have to think in terms of who is your audience and tailor it that way. And that's the marketing side of my brain. The marketing side. Can I sell this? Who's going to watch this? How they going to see this? Who's going to fund this? So there are projects that you do because you love it, and there are projects that you do because you're able to execute it in a way that communicates the ideas that you have to people very clearly.
I love that. Now,
Did that answer your question?
I think you answered the question. I think you did. And I think it's important also to understand, and this is part of your life work, kind of bringing Ma'afa. I think the next level of Ma'afa work is how do we tell our stories and allow us to showcase them with value and respect, because you're Martin Luther King, you're Muhammad Ali, you're Stephon Marbury, you're Kanye West. Those are our stories, and they all come from, at different parts, you see trauma of the that transatlantic slave disorder. I mean, the transatlantic slave trade kind of coming up in their lives. Like their circumstances, their greatness, and some of their evils come from that experience. So I think that you answered that question greatly, and it would be great to see that kind of documentary, whether you do it or someone else do it.
Mhm. Yep.
Natalie says, do you have any tips on how to expose young people to a career path since arts education has been eliminated out of public schools?
Well, when we were younger, we went to museums all the time. If there was even something almost black, we were there, whether the school took us or our parents took us. Anything black, but I came up in this, 60s, 70s. So everything black is beautiful was becoming a thing. So there was a lot more opportunity for us to have that. I would recommend that anybody who has any kids anywhere, bring them to the New York Historical Society and go see the exhibit about Black is Beautiful from Kwame Brathwaite. Kwame Brathwaite was a photographer who along with his brother Alambe Brath, they founded the New York Black is Beautiful and the Grandessa models. The Grandessa models are the most beautiful black women you've ever seen in your life who were modeling in the 60s. And they photograph all of black life in a beautiful setting, as beauty. So take them to that. Give them a camera. Cameras are cheap nowadays. Your phone is your camera, because this TikTok generation can make little movies. That's how you expose them. You expose them to things that reinforce who they are, and not denigrate who they are, but celebrate who they are, and then tell the story that they want to tell. When I've talked to, I was at a class pre-pandemic, and it was a class of challenged kids. And I said, give me the worst ones, because I know how to work them easy. They're actually easier to work than the smart ones, because all you have to do is show them something that they like and then tell them they can do it, and then show them how they can do it. So I divided the class up into the creative writing group, the camera group, the art direction group. Everybody had to work it out. They figured it out, and then they had to make a thing. And we picked an article that's in the room. I think I picked a globe, and they had to make a commercial to sell this globe. Challenge them, show them what their options are, and let them do it, and give them whatever the tools are, because with their phones right now, they don't need nobody. These new phones, you kidding me? This the iPhone 16 and Samsung 22, I can make a movie. And these phones are 4K, so you can make a movie. You can cast it on your TV, boom, and get them into after school programs. And wherever's an after school program, look for one, find one, get them in it. And there's enough programs that are out here that we're not, like HEOP and things like that. And I forgot the name of the program. College Bound. They're not called that now, but they exist still. You can get your kid in one of these private schools that's paid for. You got to look, and you got to find it.
I think that's important. The stuff is out there. Like I hear oftentimes that, oh, they cut it from schools. They did, but there's so many programs. When Eden was younger, she was booked and busy before she was really booked and busy, because we had her in all kinds of free activities. And unfortunately, these great acting classes, these how to do tech, how to do coding, there's other people are there. They're free, but other people take advantage of them. We don't go out.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter research.
Programs at the Children's Museum. There are cultural programs that are still out there that folks are trying to make sure that our young people know, A, that they are valuable, B, here's your culture, because you got one, and C, how you take it from where we've had it to where you're going to be going with it.
Just if I can do a quick little plug for the Brooklyn alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, we have 3 programs for young people that is amazing. We have our GYMS program for younger girls. We have our Teen Lift, for some older girls and guys. And we have Embody, where we teach our young men all kinds of life skills and expose them to all different things. Actually, each program, all three, gyms, is it gyms or Betty Shabazz? We have Betty Shabazz, the Betty Shabazz Academy, our Teen Lift, and also our Embody. Excellent programs, and we have a scholarship. Let me tell you about, let me just give y'all, y'all share with y'all people. Brooklyn Alumni gives out scholarships that will last all 4 years. Oh, did she say 4 years? I said 4 years. So if your kid got great grades, 4 years, you will get a sizable scholarship. We ain't talking about book money, but to help you with that big old tuition. So, and we always struggle with people sending in applications. Applications are available now, Brooklyn Alumni, alumni.org. Just throw it out there, a little quick commercial for y'all. Tasia asked a question, and her question is, what was or is your push? You are super amazing and in the most shadiest industry ever, which will make you want to give up. But what's your push and keeps you there? And while the industry is, if I could just add, while the industry is shady, it's shady if you only attract it shady. Somebody like her, she's attracting light. And so she's around it's shady folk.
We got the shade. Trust and believe we got the shady people. Say it again. You said shady, just threw me off.
What's your push?
What's my push? Because I know I'm better than all of that. I don't need them. I don't need them. I like to be around it. I like having free tickets. I like to go to hear some music. I like to go to the clubs that I got to pay to get in. I like to go to it. I like that, but I don't need that. That's not something that's not going to make, that is not paying this Con Ed bill. That did not buy this piece of art. That is not responsible for me being overweight. That's because I can eat good. That's not it. That's my push.
I like it because you better than them. That speaks to there was a question someone asked, like, how was it working in as a Black woman in a male dominated label, music industry, film industry? And then someone says, what spaces should someone be able to navigate to network as a newbie in these industries? You could just throw both of those questions together.
Well, I think I thought I answered the other one. I was, like I said, I was older, and I never let anybody forget that I work for you. I'm not your friend. I'm friendly. I'll come to an anniversary party, a birthday party, but I ain't staying. You're not going to have me the one being drunk in the room. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to be the topic of anybody's conversation, other than, oh, she's really nice. I'm glad she came by. She really came by for real. That's the conversation. Or she gave us a nice gift. Nice conversation. That's it. That's what I got for them.
I like that because your gift is your conversation. Yes, indeed. Yes,
Right.
indeed.
I mean, you know who I worked for. Everybody wants to hang out with him. Everybody wants to come on. Well, I'll have what's his name pick you up at 2:00 in the morning. That's okay. I drive myself. Thank you. And I don't have to be anywhere at 2:00 in the morning unless it's a flight to Africa. Thank you. I'm not going. Good luck. Have a good time. Call me if you need me. I got bail money, so just make sure you call me because I got the phone number to the lawyer to call. Who I got to bail out now. Listen. I had bail bondsmen in LA and New York and in Miami. Thank you very much.
You are so silly. The question is, what's your best and memorable project you worked on? But I want to also add on to that. You said, I know who you worked with, but talk about some of the names of the people that you worked with and some of the stars that you saw when they first were starting out, and now they're just like, wow. I know you got some names that kind of shock people.
Well, you know what? This is what I say to people when they ask me about, so you're around all these stars? I'm like, they put their pants on one leg at a time like you do, right? You know that. You know the women piss sitting down and the men piss standing up. You know that, right? That's the same. They have a skill that's different than the skill you have. They use that skill. Trust and believe they can't do what you do. You might not could do what they do, but they definitely can't do what you do. People who are teachers. I can't stand in front of 28 monsters every single day and act like I love them. Them little kids, man, I'd be in jail. What? I'd be in jail after Tuesday. Come on. So I don't I think probably my longevity is I don't look at them that way. I'm not, I'm not overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed when I met Kofi Annan. I'm overwhelmed when I get to meet David Dinkins. I'm overwhelmed when Mr. Sutton, Percy Sutton, called me his other daughter. I'm overwhelmed with that. I'm overwhelmed when I met Sarah Betty Shabazz. That overwhelms me. Russell, you signed my check. You my boss. You know, Byron Lewis, you signed my check. You're my boss. Everybody else, Donnie Einer, okay, I see you every Monday. Tommy Mottola, I see you every Wednesday. You too both sign my check. But beyond that, they're not my friends. They're not, they take my work time and they compensate me for it. My lifetime is with my friends. It's with my sorors. It's with my family. That those people are more important to me than anybody else. Those are the people I'm gonna call if my lights ain't on. That's who's gonna write the check.
And what about Spike? Did you ever become friendly with Spike? I know
I've
you
never
worked.
worked with Spike. There's
You
never,
never worked with Spike? Oh, it's
not
still.
never, not never. My best friend, my bestest friend, bestest male friend, has been his producer worked with him for a long time, but I have never worked with Spike at all. I came from a different end of production. Folks, he came out of Morehouse and he was on his own doing his thing. I had already been working in production with people who had worked in the industry, who worked in advertising, were the first Black people working in the Madison Avenue agencies. So, and were trained in the white people way to do stuff. So we, it was a different lane. And God bless his lane, but I'm not, that's a different lane.
I like it. I have a question here that I love this question. It says, what are some of the scenes in any of your projects that you've had to leave on the editing floor that you regret or simply wish? And I know you don't cut, but maybe you've seen some stuff that you wish would have been included.
The things that get on the editing floor, it's hard to answer that. I'll tell you why, especially in documentary, because you are working to tell a story in a fashion that you don't bore the people who are watching. You want them to stay engaged. So sometimes in telling the story, you do have to tighten it up. And that's really good reason to have a story editor who can say, this is a really great scene, but it has absolutely nothing to do with, moving the story forward. It's a great piece of, filmmaking, but, what's it going to do for you? So there's not really, I think we got everything. The directors fight for their, vision. My job is to help them fight it and fight the people who are telling them that they can't have it. I think the thing that we had, did we cut something? The Ali piece had to be cut because they had to fit it into the broadcast window. The director's cut would have probably let some of the pieces live a little longer.
I like that. I like that. We have a question from Susan, and Susan says, or she asks, what would you say is the biggest factor that has led to your success, and what metrics have you used to quantify your success? Is that notoriety, an internal gauge? What is it that you measure your level of success?
Well, like a lot of people, I many times suffer from imposter syndrome. So I never think that I'm a full success. And then when I'm reminded, have those moments like, oh yeah, I'm at the Emmys. I guess I did do something right. It's the first part of that question was what internally. As long I used to function at, am I doing something that would make my parents proud? If my parents are proud of me, if my brother was happy with me, if my nephews look up to something I've done, then that's my success. If if my friends can say that's my sister right there, if my sorors can say that's my sister right there, then I'm a success. That's the success metric for me, is that everybody's happy. But I suffer like everybody else with imposter syndrome. Am I really this good? Am I good as really?
And you're hilarious. We do something at church called Breakfast and Bible, right? And so so we both attend the same church, and so we'll be talking, and there's a time where we're chit chatting on things, and I'll be like, "Let me tell you what Marjorie Clarke is doing," da 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 da, and she'll just be like, "You got such a big mouth. What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "You need to be celebrated." And Pastor will be like, "I didn't know. She never told me." And I was like, "Yeah, y'all got to be locked in because we have a diamond in our midst." That's how I see you, as a diamond. And I do think you walk around Brooklyn like because
No, Brooklyn is my second home.
you're a
I,
Queens girl.
I'm a Queens girl, but my Aunt Pamela used to live on at 185 Hall Street. That was my other home. My friends, everybody thinks I'm a Brooklyn person because, especially back in the 80s, everybody lived in Fort Greene. Forget Clinton Hill. It's Fort Greene. Fort Greene. Thank you very much. Washington, DeKalb, Clinton, um, oh my God, St. John, I'm sorry, St. James Place, you know, Dad, Mike's, two steps down.
You shouting out spots like you really been in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I remember two steps when it was like, I think it's been through 5 names. What is it,
Ooh,
Buttercup now? Whatever the name is. Oh no, it's got a West Indian name.
oh,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I love this. And when did you go over? When did you pledge Delta? And who are some of the deltas, like the deltas in the industry or in film that you looked up to, or did you look up to any of those sorors?
I didn't know them then because, we were insulated. And I went over in spring 1976. So, yeah, so I'm officially a Delta deer. I went spring 76. And unfortunately, um, we did not, my line is not as close as we should have been and should be. I'm in touch with one of my line sisters still, Eugenia, who's one of my ace favorite, and Valerie, who lives in San Diego. But we're not as close as we are. But there were a couple of sisters who pledged me, who were the reasons why. My dear friend, and I love her madly, Debbie Walls, was an inspiration and the reason I wanted to be a Delta. My best friend Pat, who although is younger than me, went to Virginia Union, she pledged a year before me. So, and she had her pledges make me a paddle that was 7 feet, 6 feet tall. It was 6 feet tall. But at the time, I didn't know a lot. We didn't know our history like that. We knew our historical names, but we didn't know who our contemporaries were at the time. We didn't learn that.
In my mind, I could just see you really being in love with like a Ruby D or like
Oh, I
some.
love Miss Ruby. Are you kidding? We worked with Miss Ruby. Was very close to Byron Lewis, and she did a lot of work for AT&T, who was one of our clients at the time.
Give us a Ruby D story, please.
I don't have one. I
Oh,
wish
Lord.
I did. I wish I did. I did not work on the brand while she was still working on the brand. I had not come there yet. But she was just the most beautiful sister. Oh my goodness. Both of them. Both of them. Both of them.
I used to have a crush on Ozzie Davis, but that's a different story.
That's a different story for a different time because I love your husband. Stop it.
Lord. I mean, he actually told me to get married to Greg, but that's a better story. Um, one question I see here, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up. I'll bring Madam President up. It says, what is your dream story to tell, and who would you just love to work with? One or two people that you would love to work with in the future.
Wow. What would be a dream story to tell? I haven't thought about that. I'm working on a project with somebody, and I want to tell that story, and it has to do with the funeral directors and how COVID-19 affected them during the pandemic. That's a story that I'm definitely going to do with a friend of mine who's a funeral director who asked me to help her do this story. I'm going to do that. And then what was the other half of that question?
Who would you like to work with?
Oh my God. Who would I like to work with? Um, you know, I'd like to continue what I'm doing, working with Cootie and Chike. I love where they're going. They're evolving. They're going into another level, another lane. But I'm on the other side. I'm on the side where now I'm about to be in cruise control. I'm a picker project, and maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. Trying to allegedly retire, but as alleged, nobody really retires in production. You just, work less.
I like that. I interviewed Cootie and Chike and brought your name up, of course.
Uh,
And they talked about how you helped them bring their dream to fruition. How does it feel to have such a stellar project that you guys were nominated for an Emmy? And that's no small feat to be nominated for an Emmy. About such a Love Him or Leave Him, just such a powerful character. Knowing that you were at the helm of that.
well, as Cootie says, God's at the helm. We just walking along with him. We just the hands on the ground. That's how we're guided. So it's yeah. That is how it's guided. I'm just trying to think, who would I love to work with? I've worked with Ava for a project for this activist
You
organization.
mean Ava DuVernay? You just called her by her first name?
Yes.
Ava. I worked with Ava. I've worked with Ava, and Ruby was so sweet, but I didn't work with her, but she's just a lovely woman. And I don't get impressed with Russell Simmons because, I am I walk in and I am a Delta.
Hey,
You already know that's how I
like
see
I
you anyway.
said, they put their pants on. Ladies put their pantyhose on one leg at a time. They ain't no more fabulous than you, no more fabulous than anybody else in this room right now, especially nobody who's a Delta.
I mean, you're pretty fabulous. You're pretty fabulous. I'm going to bring up Madam President up, and Madam President.
Thank you all
Thank
for this.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Madam President.
Yes, good evening.
Name.
Sora Marjorie Clarke, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us this evening. Your whole conversation invoked many thoughts in my mind. First, it invoked my childhood because I grew up within the arts by my dad's profession. He was in the National Black Theater, and so I was always behind the scene on set and so forth. So it was like very nostalgic for me. Second of all, I love your self-awareness and your self-confidence. And third, you exude my belief in life that you just walk in your own truth. And once you do that, everything else follows because you're walking in your true path. So as you talk, it was just like, it was a spiritual moment for me because you said so many things that I believe in my heart. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for just showing Black woman strength, inner strength. And Nicole, thank you for choosing her for our first Red Talks Pearls of Wisdom, because the wisdom ran very deep. And I hope the audience really listened and took the gems that you dropped.
Oh, thank you.
I would love to have this again later in the our sorority year, Nicole. So thank you again. To our audience, please follow us on social media. We have many great things coming for you this sorority year. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We also have, what do we have coming up? We have Wakanda Forever, but unfortunately, we sold out. We're trying to get more tickets, so follow our social media to see.
Arts and Letters, November the 4th, November the 3rd, we have the Force and D's for Red Talks.
So let me just say, Sora Clarke, that's another thing you invoke, because as Nicole knows, I love old school hip hop. right?
Yes,
Love
yes.
it, love it, love it. So you were just invoking many things to me tonight. But thank you again. Thank you to the audience for joining us, and everyone have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Nicole. I love you. I love you, love you, love you, love you.
I love you, love you, love you, love you. Like you like cook food or
Like
like grits with
cooked
sugar.
food. Like cooked food for real.